They say you never really know the monsters that live behind closed doors until one of them finally gets caught. But before we dive deep into this story, please click that subscribe button because the story you're about to hear might just open your eyes to something happening closer than you think. It was a cloudy afternoon in Surulere, Lagos, the kind of day when the sky looks heavy, like it's hiding a secret. Inside a quiet compound stood a small yellow painted house, its walls fading under years of heat and the rain. That was where Amara lived, an 8-year-old girl with eyes bright enough to melt anyone's heart and a voice soft like morning rain. Amara was the kind of child that loved to help. She swept the compound, fetched water for her aunt, and always greeted the neighbors with a shy smile. Her mother had passed away 2 years earlier, and since then, she had been staying with her mother's older sister, Mama Ifeoma, a woman who tried her best to raise her despite her own struggles. But sometimes in life, even safe places hide danger. Next door lived a family that everyone respected. Mr. Tunde, his wife, their teenage son, Kunle, and their daughter, Bisi. Mr. Tunde worked in a bank. He was known in church as Brother Tunde, the prayer warrior. People greeted him with admiration. They saw him as a man of integrity. No one ever imagined that the same man and his own son would one day shake the entire street with a story that would make headlines, break hearts, and test the meaning of justice. It began quietly. One afternoon, while Mama Ifeoma was at a petty trade in the market, Amara had gone next door to play with Bisi. They used to draw in the sand, make doll houses out of carton boxes, and share biscuits. But that day, Bisi wasn't home. Her mother had taken her to visit a cousin. That was when Kunle appeared, a 14-year-old boy who always pretended to be kind, but whose smile hid something darker. Something happened that day that shattered Amara's innocence, something she didn't even have the words to describe. When Bisi returned later that evening, she noticed Amara was unusually quiet. She didn't play, didn't talk, didn't smile. She just sat under the mango tree, drawing circles in the sand. "Amara, are you okay?" she asked. Amara looked up slowly, her small voice trembling. "Kunle said I shouldn't tell anyone, or he'll hurt me." Bisi's heart pounded. "Tell anyone what?" Amara's lips quivered, and tears fell silently down her cheek. At that moment, Bisi understood, maybe not everything, but enough to know something terrible had happened. She ran inside and told her father. That night, the house was silent. But the silence didn't last long. When Mr. Tunde heard what his daughter said, he told her, "Don't ever repeat such nonsense again, you hear me?" But the look in his eyes wasn't confusion. It was fear. A fear only guilty people carry. And that's where the nightmare began. A darkness that would stretch over 5 long years. Until the day the same man who silenced everyone finally faced the kind of justice no prayer could wash away. But to understand how it all unfolded, we must go back to that night, when a father's anger turned into something far worse than anyone could imagine. In the months that followed, Amara changed. The once playful girl who used to laugh at every little thing now moved like a shadow. She avoided eye contact, spoke softly, and jumped at sudden noises. People said she was just shy. Only Bisi knew that something deeper was wrong. At night, Amara would wake from nightmares, whispering prayers into her pillow. She wanted to tell her aunt, but every time she tried, the words tangled in her throat. How do you explain pain that even you don't understand? One day, Bisi found Amara behind the church, sitting alone. "Amara, You can tell me anything, she said. Amara hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. BC, your father said if I ever talk again, nobody will believe me. BC's eyes widened. She didn't know what to do. Her own father, the man who led morning prayers, had become the reason her friend was breaking apart. That evening she cried quietly, torn between fear and truth. But something in her heart told her she couldn't stay silent forever. Time moved. A year passed, then 2, then 3. Amara grew taller, quieter, more distant. The people in the neighborhood whispered that the girl was strange. Only BC knew the truth, and the secret weighed on her like a stone. When BC turned 16, she left for boarding school. Before she left, she looked Amara in the eyes and said, I will make this right one day. I promise. Amara nodded, tears shining in her eyes. That promise became the tiny spark that kept her alive through the darkest nights. 5 years after that first terrible day, BC returned home for university break. She was older now, stronger, and she'd seen enough of the world to understand that silence protects the guilty. When she saw Amara again, she almost didn't recognize her. Amara was 19, thin, quiet, with sadness buried behind a forced smile. But when their eyes met, the old memory came rushing back. And BC knew it was time. That evening, while her father was away, BC told her mother everything, every word Amara had whispered years ago. Her mother froze. The color drained from her face. Then, slowly, she said, we must call the police. When the officers came, the neighborhood was stunned. Everyone watched as the patrol van stopped in front of Mr. Tunde's gate. The man who once led church prayers now stood in handcuffs beside his son. No one spoke. Even the wind felt still. Amara stood behind the crowd, trembling. BC came and held her hand. You're free now, she whispered. It's over. But freedom, Amara would later learn, isn't just walking away from your captors. It's learning to breathe again. It's believing that your voice matters. Weeks later, the court proceedings began. Journalists came. Advocates for children's rights attended. Amara's story reached the airwaves and inspired organizations to educate families about abuse. Mama Ifeoma wept in the courtroom. She wished she had seen the signs earlier. The fear, the silence, the fading smiles. But she was there now, holding Amara's hand as she faced her abusers and told her truth. Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew steadier. Each word she spoke broke the walls of shame that had caged her for years. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, the courtroom went quiet. Amara didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and exhaled, as though letting go of years of held-in air. Months later, Amara began volunteering at a foundation that helps abused children find counseling and safe homes. She started smiling again, genuinely this time. And BC never left her side. Narrator's voice softens. Justice doesn't erase the past, but it gives the future a chance to heal. Amara's story became a lesson in the neighborhood, not just about evil, but about silence. Because silence, when it protects the wrong people, becomes another form of violence. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt afraid to speak up, remember Amara. One voice, one truth can end years of pain. Don't stay silent when you can save a life. And if you believe stories like this should keep opening eyes and hearts, hit that subscribe button. Together we can make sure no child ever has to suffer in silence again.